Matthew chapter 11. Everyone, therefore, who is of such a character that he will confess me before men in the realization of and in testimony to his oneness with me, I also will confess him before my Father who is in heaven in the realization of and testimony to my oneness with him. But whoever is of such a nature that he will deny me before men, I also will deny him before my Father who is in heaven. Do not suppose that I came with the result that my coming would throw peace suddenly upon the earth. I did not come with the result that my coming would throw peace, but a sword. For I came with the result that my coming puts a man at variance with his father, and a daughter against her mother, and the newly married wife against her mother-in-law, and the enemies of a man shall be those of his household. He who has an affection for father or mother above that which he has for me is not worthy of me. And he who has an affection for son or daughter above that which he has for me is not worthy of me. And he who does not take his cross and take the same road with me which I take is not worthy of me. He who has found his soul life shall ruin and render it useless, and he who has passed a sentence of death upon his soul life for my sake shall find it. He who receives you receives me, and he who receives me receives him who sent me on a mission. He who receives a prophet in the name of a prophet shall receive a prophet's reward. And he who receives a righteous man in the name of a righteous man shall receive a righteous man's reward. And whoever shall give one of these lesser ones in their station in life a drink of cool water in the name of a pupil, assuredly, I am saying to you, he shall positively not lose his reward. And it came to pass that when Jesus finished giving detailed orders to his 12 disciples, he went away from that place for the purpose of teaching and of making a public proclamation in their cities with that formality, gravity, and authority with which must be listened to and obeyed. Now John, having heard in the prison the works of the Christ, having sent through the intermediate agency of his pupils, said to him, As for you, are you he, the one who is the coming one? Or should we be looking for another Messiah of a different character? And Jesus, answering, said to them, Having gone on your way, take word back to John concerning the things you are hearing and seeing. Blind people are recovering their sight, and lame people are walking about. Lepers are being cleansed, and deaf people are hearing, and dead people are being raised up, and poor people are being given good news. And spiritually prosperous is he who does not find in me that of which he disapproves of, and that which hinders him from acknowledging my authority. And while these were going on their way, Jesus began to be saying to the crowds concerning John, What did you go out into the uninhabited place to be contemplating as a spectacle? A reed being agitated by wind? Well, then what did you go out to see? A man clothed in the soft garments of luxury and effeminacy? Behold, those accustomed to wearing the garments of luxury are in the homes of the kings. Well then, why did you go out? To see a prophet? Yes, I am saying to you, and more than a prophet. This is he concerning whom it has been written, and the record is extant today. Behold, as for myself, I send my messenger ahead of you, who will make ready your road before you. Assuredly, I am saying to you, there has not arisen among those born of women a greater one than John the Baptizer. However, the person of most humble station in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. Indeed, from the days of John the Baptizer until this moment, the kingdom of heaven is being taken by storm, and the strong and forceful ones claim it for themselves eagerly. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. And assuming that you would be disposed to receive the following favorably, he himself is Elijah, he who is about to come. He who has ears, let him be hearing. But to what shall I liken this breed of men? It is similar to children who are seated in marketplaces who are calling to a group of a different character, saying, We played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We mourned, and you did not beat your breast for grief. For there came John, not eating nor drinking, and they are saying he has a demon. There came the Son of Man, eating and drinking, and they are saying, Behold, a man who is a glutton and given to wine, one who associates familiarly with tax collectors and sinners, stained with vice and crime. And yet this aforementioned wisdom was shown to be such as it should be, righteous, this demonstration having its source in its works. Then he began to be reproaching the cities in which the most of his miracles, demonstrations of the power of God, were done, because they did not repent. Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! Because if in Tyre and Sidon there had been done the miracles of God's power which were done in you, they would in that case long ago have repented in sackcloth and ashes. Nevertheless, I am saying to you, for Tyre and Sidon it shall be more endurable in the day of judgment than for you. And as for you, Capernaum, you will not be exalted as far as heaven, will you? You will be caused to descend even to the depths of misery and disgrace in the unseen world. Because if in Sodom there had been done the miracles demonstrating divine power which were done in you, it would in that case have remained until this day. Nevertheless, I am saying to you, for the land of Sodom it will be more endurable in the day of judgment than for you. At that epochal, strategic moment of time, Jesus answering said, I render praise to you, Father, Lord of the heaven and the earth, in joyful acknowledgement and concurrence of the fact that you hid these things from the wise and understanding ones and revealed them to those who are untaught. Even so, Father, because thus it was your good pleasure. All things to me were delivered by my Father, and no one has a full and experiential knowledge of the Son except the Father. Neither does anyone have a full and experiential knowledge of the Father except the Son, and he, whoever he may be, to whom the Son desires to reveal him. Come here to me, all who are growing weary to the point of exhaustion, and who have been loaded with burdens and are bending beneath their weight. And I alone will cause you to cease from your labor and take away your burdens, and thus refresh you with rest. Take at once my yoke upon you, and learn from me, because I am meek and lowly in heart, and you will find cessation from labor and refreshment for your souls. For my yoke is mild and pleasant, and my load is light in weight. At that epochal and strategic time, Jesus proceeded on the Sabbath through the grain fields. And his disciples were hungry and began to be picking off the grain and to be eating it. Now the Pharisees, having seen this, said to him, Behold, your disciples are doing that which is not lawful to be habitually done on a Sabbath. But he said to them, Have you not read what David did when he was hungry, and those with him? How he went into the house of God, and the loaves of bread which were set forth they ate, which it was not lawful for him to eat, neither for those with him, except for the priests alone. Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple desecrate the Sabbath and are guiltless? However, I am saying to you, something greater than the temple is in this place. Moreover, if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not altar sacrifice, you would not in that case have pronounced guilty those who are guiltless, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. And having gone away from that place, he went into their synagogue. And behold, there was a man there, having a hand shrunken and wasted. And they asked him, saying, Is it lawful on the Sabbath to heal? In order that they might bring an accusation against him in court. But he said to them, What man shall there be of you, who shall have one sheep, and if this would fall on the Sabbath into a pit, would he not get a grip on it and lift it out? Therefore, how much better is a man than a sheep? Wherefore is it lawful on the Sabbath to be doing good? Then he says to the man, Extend your hand at once. And he extended it, and it was restored to its former state of soundness as the other one. But the Pharisees, having gone out, consulted together against him, how they might destroy him. Now when Jesus came to know it, he withdrew from there, and many people followed with him. And he healed them all. And he charged them sharply that they should not make him known, in order that there might be fulfilled that which was spoken through the intermediate agency of Isaiah the prophet, saying, Behold, my servant whom I chose, my beloved in whom my soul takes pleasure. I will place my spirit upon him, and an equitable administration of justice he will announce to the Gentiles. He will not wrangle, nor even shout, neither will anyone hear his voice in the streets. A reed that has been completely crushed he will not break, and a dimly burning lamp wick he will not quench until he will have caused the equitable administration of justice to move straight on to its intended goal, resulting in victory. And in his name will the Gentiles hopefully trust. Then there was brought to him one possessed with a demon, blind and dumb, and he healed him, so that the one who was dumb spoke and saw. And all the common people were beside themselves with astonishment, and kept on saying, "This man, is he perchance the son of David?" But the Pharisees, having heard, said, "This fellow is not ejecting the demons except by means of Beelzebul, ruler of the demons." And knowing their thoughts, he said to them, "Every kingdom split up into factions at variance with itself is reduced to naught. And every city or house split up into factions at variance with itself shall not stand." And assuming that Satan is ejecting Satan, he was at variance with himself. How is it possible then for his kingdom to stand? And assuming for the moment that I, by means of Beelzebul, am ejecting the demons, your sons, by means of whom are they ejecting them? For this reason, they themselves shall be your judges. But since by means of God's Spirit I am ejecting the demons, surely then the kingdom of God has come upon you unexpectedly. Or how is a person able to enter the house of the strong man and carry off by force his household furnishings, unless he first binds the strong man, and then he will plunder his house? He who is not with me is against me, and he who is not gathering with me is scattering. On this account I am saying to you, every sin and malicious slander shall be forgiven men, but the aforementioned impious and reproachful speech injurious to the divine majesty of the Spirit shall not be forgiven. And whoever speaks a word against the Son of Man, it shall be forgiven him. But whoever speaks against the Holy Spirit, it shall not be forgiven him, neither in this age nor in the one about to come. Either declare the tree good and its fruit good, or declare the tree rotten and its fruit rotten. For by its fruit is the tree known. O progeny of vipers, who are such by nature, how is it possible that you are able to be speaking good things, being by nature pernicious individuals? For out of that which fills the heart, the mouth is accustomed to speak. The good man out of his good treasure house brings out good things, and the pernicious man out of his pernicious treasure house brings out pernicious things. Moreover, I am saying to you, every word which men shall speak which has no legitimate work, which is inoperative and thus morally useless and unprofitable, they shall give account of at the day of judgment. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words shall you be condemned. Then certain of those learned in the sacred scriptures and certain of the Pharisees answered him, saying, Teacher, we are desiring to see an attesting miracle from you. But he answering said to them, A pernicious and adulterous breed is always hankering after an attesting miracle. And an attesting miracle shall not be given it, except the attesting miracle of Jonah the prophet. For just as Jonah was in the gullet of the sea monster 3 days and 3 nights, thus shall the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights. Men, Ninevites, shall arise in the judgment with this breed of men, and shall condemn it, because they repented as a result of the proclamation of Jonah. And behold, something more than Jonah is here. A queen of the south shall rise up in the judgment with this breed of men, and shall condemn it, because she came from the frontiers of the earth to hear Solomon's wisdom. And behold, something more than Solomon is here. Now whenever the unclean spirit goes out of a man, he travels through arid places seeking a cessation of his circumstances, and as a result, tranquility, and he does not find it. Then he says, Into my home I will return from where I went out. And having come, he finds it unoccupied and swept clean and fully decorated. Then he proceeds and takes with him 7 other spirits more pernicious than himself, and having entered, he makes his permanent home there. And the last circumstances of that man become worse than the first ones. Thus shall it be also with respect to this breed of men, this pernicious breed. While he was still speaking to the crowds, behold, his mother and his brethren had taken their stand outside, seeking to speak to him. And someone said to him, Behold, your mother and your brethren are standing outside, seeking to speak to you. And answering, he said to the one speaking to him, Who is my mother, and who are my brethren? And having stretched out his hand toward those who were his pupils, he said, Behold, my mother and my brethren. For he who is of such a nature that he does the will of my Father who is in heaven, that very person is my brother and sister and mother. On that day Jesus, having come out of the house, was sitting at the seashore. And there gathered together to him great crowds, so that he went on board a boat in order that he might have a place where he could be seated. And the whole crowd had taken a position on the beach and was standing there. And he spoke to them many things in the form of illustrations by using the familiar in nature or human life, which would explain unfamiliar truths of the spiritual life, saying, Behold, the sower went out for the purpose of sowing seed. And in his sowing, some on the one hand fell beside the footpath, and having come, the birds ate it up. Other seed, on the other hand, fell upon the shallow ground where the rock layers were near the surface, and where it was not having much earth. And immediately it sprang up, because it did not have depth of earth. And the sun, having arisen, it was burnt with the heat, and because it was not having rootage, it withered away. But still other seed fell among the seeds of thorns, and the thorns came up and choked them off. But still other seed fell upon the ground which was good, and kept on producing fruit, some on the one hand 100%, some on the other hand 60%, and still some other 30%. He who has ears, let him be hearing. And having come, his disciples said to him, Why are you speaking to them by means of illustrations? And answering, he said, To you it has been given to come to know experientially the hidden truths now revealed and intelligible of the kingdom of heaven, with the result that you now know them. But to those it has not been given, with the result that at present they are ignorant of them. For whoever is of such a nature as to have, it shall be given to him, and he shall have an abundance. But whoever is of such a nature that he does not have, even that which he does have shall be taken away from him. On account of this, by means of illustrations I am speaking to them, because while seeing they are not seeing, and while hearing they are not hearing, neither are they understanding. And in them the prophecy of Isaiah is in process of fulfillment, the one which says, By means of the sense of hearing you shall hear, and by no means shall you understand. And while you are seeing, you shall see, and positively not perceive. For the heart of this people was rendered dull and callous, and with their ears they heard with difficulty, and their eyes they shut, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and with their ears hear, and with their heart understand, and turn back, and I should heal them. But spiritually prosperous are your eyes, because they see, and your ears because they hear. For assuredly I am saying to you, many prophets and righteous men passionately desired to see the things which you are seeing, and did not see them, and to hear the things which you are hearing, and did not hear them. As for you, therefore, hear the illustration of the one who sows seed. While everyone is listening and not comprehending the word of the kingdom, there comes the pernicious one and snatches away that which was sown in his heart. This man is he who was sown as seed alongside the footpath. And he who was sown upon the shallow ground, where the rock layers were near the surface, this man is the one who hears the word and immediately with joy receives it. And he does not have rootage in himself, but is by nature a temporizer. And the pressure of circumstances having come, and persecution because of the word, immediately he sees in it that of which he disapproves, and which hinders him from acknowledging its authority. And he who was sown as seed into the midst of the thorns, this is he who hears the word, and the worries of this age and the deceitfulness of its wealth combine to utterly choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. But he who was sown as seed upon the good ground, this is he who hears the word and understands it, who is such a one as bears fruit and produces, as the case of one on the one hand, 100%, and in the case of another on the other hand, 60%, and in the case of still another, 30%. Another illustration he set before them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened to a man who sows good seed in his field. But while men were sleeping, his enemy came and went to sowing bastard wheat over in the midst of the wheat, and went off. And when the wheat stalk put forth leaves and produced fruit, then also the bastard wheat came to light and became evident. And the slaves of the master of the house having come, they said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? From where, therefore, does it have bastard wheat? And he said to them, A man, an enemy, did this. And the slaves say to him, Do you desire, therefore, having gone off, that we should gather them up? But he said, No, lest when you are gathering up the bastard wheat, you uproot at the same time with it the wheat. Permit both to grow together until the harvest. And in the strategic season of the harvest, I will say to the harvesters, Gather first the bastard wheat and bind it into bundles for the purpose of burning it. But the wheat gather together in my granary. Another illustration he set before them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man, having taken, sowed in his field, which indeed is the smallest of all the seeds. But when it is grown, It is greater than the garden herbs and grows to the shape and size of a tree, so that the birds of the heaven come and roost in its branches." Another illustration he gave them. "The kingdom of heaven is like yeast, which a woman, having taken, mixed with 3 measures of wheat flour until the whole of it was permeated by the yeast." These things, all of them, Jesus spoke in the form of illustrations to the crowds, and apart from an illustration, he spoke not even one thing to them, in order that there might be fulfilled that which was spoken through the intermediate agency of the prophet, saying, "I will open my mouth in the form of illustrations. I will utter things which have been kept secret from the time when the foundations of the universe were laid." Then, having sent the crowds away, he came into the house, and his disciples came to him, saying, "Make thoroughly clear at once to us the illustration of the bastard wheat of the field." And answering, he said, "He who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. Moreover, the field is the world, and the good seed, these are the sons of the kingdom. But the bastard wheat represents the sons of the pernicious one, and the enemy, the one who sowed it, is the devil. And the harvest is the consummation of the age, and the harvesters are angels. Even as therefore the bastard wheat is gathered and is burned in the fire, thus shall it be at the consummation of the age. The Son of Man shall send his angels on a mission, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all those who create stumbling blocks for others, and those who make a practice of lawlessness, and they shall throw them into the furnace of fire. There, in that place, there shall be the lamentation and the gnashing of the teeth. Then those who are righteous, like the sun when it bursts through the clouds which have hidden it, shall shine forth through the world of evil, dissipating the darkness of sin which has obscured the good and veiled the true glory of their righteousness in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears to be hearing, let him be hearing. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure which has been hidden in the field, which after a man has found it, he hid, and in his joy goes off and sells as much as he possesses and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a traveling merchant buyer seeking beautiful pearls, and having found one pearl of great value, having gone off, sold all, as much as he was possessing, having staked all that he had in one business venture which would either make or break him. And he purchased it in the marketplace. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet, which was thrown into the sea, and which gathered some fish out of every species, which, when it was filled, having drawn it up on the beach, and having seated themselves, they gathered up the good ones into receptacles, but the worthless ones they threw away. Thus shall it be in the consummation of the age. The angels shall go out and shall separate those who are pernicious out from the midst of those who are righteous, and shall throw them into the furnace of fire. There, in that place, there shall be the lamentation and the gnashing of the teeth. Have you understood all these things? They say to him, Yes. And he said to them, Because of this, every man learned in the sacred scriptures, who has accepted the precepts and instructions with reference to the kingdom of heaven, is like a man who is a master of a house, who is of such a character that he dispenses with hearty enjoyment out of his treasured house things new as to quality, and also things mellowed with age by reason of use. And it came to pass that when Jesus finished these illustrations, he, soldier-like, broke up camp and departed from that place. And having come into his hometown, he went to teaching them in their synagogue, so that they were flabbergasted and were saying, What is the source of this wisdom and these miracles? Is not this the son of the carpenter? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brothers James and Joseph, and Simon and Judas? And his sisters, are they not all with us? From what source then does this fellow have all these things? And they saw in him that of which they disapproved, and that which hindered them from acknowledging his authority. But Jesus said to them, A prophet is not without a correct evaluation of his worth, with a corresponding deference and respect which is his due, except in his own country and in his own house. And he did not perform there many miracles because of their unbelief. At that epochal strategic time, Herod the Tetrarch came to hear the report about Jesus, and said to his servants, This is John the Baptizer. He himself was raised from the dead, and because of this the demonstrations of miraculous power are operative in him. For Herod, having seized John, bound him and put him away in prison for the sake of Herodias, the wife of Philip his brother. For John had been saying to him, It's not lawful for you to have her. And though desiring to put him to death, he feared the people, because they were holding him to be a prophet. Now Herod's birthday having come, the daughter of Herodias performed a rapid motion, leaping lewd dance in their midst, and pleased Herod, because of which he put himself under oath, and acknowledging the obligation he incurred thereby, promised to give her whatever she would ask. And she, having been previously high-pressured to action by her mother, says, "Give me at once, right here on the spot, upon a dish, the head of John the Baptizer." And though, having been put to grief, the king, yet because of the oaths under which he had put himself, and because of those who were reclining at the banquet table with him, issued the order for it to be given. And having sent the executioner, he beheaded John in the prison. And his head was brought upon a dish, and it was given to the young woman. And she brought it to her mother. And his disciples, having come, took up the body and buried it. And having gone, they brought word to Jesus. And Jesus, having heard, withdrew from there by boat to an uninhabited place apart. And the crowds, having heard this, followed him by the land route from the cities. And having come forth, he saw a vast multitude, and he was moved with compassion for them, and he healed their sick ones. And evening having come, the disciples came to him, saying, "Uninhabited is the place, and the hour already is advanced. Therefore dismiss the crowds, in order that, having gone off into the villages, they might buy for themselves provisions in the marketplaces." But Jesus said to them, "There is no necessity for them to go away. As for you, you give them at once something to eat." But they say to him, "We do not have here anything except 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he said, "Be bringing them here to me." And having commanded the crowds to recline upon the grass, having received the 5 loaves and 2 fish, having looked up to heaven, he asked the blessing, and having broken them, he gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples to the crowds. And they ate, all of them, and were all filled to their complete satisfaction. And they carried off with them the broken pieces which were left over, 12 full wicker baskets, and those eating were men about 5,000, apart from women and children. And immediately he compelled the disciples to board the boat and precede him to the other side, so that in the meantime he could dismiss the crowds. And having sent the crowds away, he went up into the mountain in private for the purpose of praying. Now evening having come, he was there alone, and the boat already was distant from the land many furlongs, being tossed by the waves, for the wind was against them. Now during the 4th watch of the night he came to them, making his way upon the sea. But the disciples, having seen him walking directly upon the sea, his sandals in contact with the water, were terrified, saying, "It is a phantasm," and they cried aloud for fear. And immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be having courage, it is I. Stop fearing." And answering him, Peter said, "O Lord, since it is you, command me to come to you on the waves." And he said, "Come at once." And having come down from the boat, Peter made his way upon the waves and came toward Jesus. But seeing the wind, he became afraid, and beginning to be sinking, he cried aloud, saying, "O Lord, save me quickly." And immediately Jesus, having stretched out his hand, seized him, and says to him, "O you of little faith, why did you waver?" And after they had gone up into the boat, the wind grew weary of blowing and sank away. And those in the boat fell upon their knees in profound reverence and worshipped him, saying, "Truly, Son of God, by nature you are." And having crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret. And the men of that place, having received knowledge of him, sent word into the whole of that surrounding territory, and they brought to him all those who were sick, and kept on begging him that they might only touch the fringe of his outer garment. And as many as touched it were made whole. Then there came to Jesus from Jerusalem Pharisees and men learned in the sacred writings, saying, "Why do those who follow your teachings sidestep the precepts which the elders received from previous generations and have handed down to us to be delivered to our successors? For they do not wash their hands in that traditionally ceremonial fashion whenever they eat bread." And answering, he said to them, "As for you, why are you also sidestepping the commandment of God because of the precepts handed down to you? For God said, 'Be placing a correct evaluation upon your father and your mother, and be according them the reverence and veneration due them. And he who calls down curses upon father or mother, let him come to his end by death. But as for you, you are saying, whoever says to his father or mother, it is a gift dedicated to God, whatever it may be by means of which you might derive help from me, he will positively not pay due reverence and respect to his father and his mother. In short, You deprived the word of God of its force and authority because of your precepts, which were handed down to you from your fathers. Actors on the stage of life that you are, playing a role of that which you are not. Most admirably and with consummate finesse did Isaiah prophesy concerning you, saying, This people places a correct evaluation upon me with their lips, and with lip service accords me all due reverence and veneration, but their heart holds back at a great distance from me. But in vain are they worshiping me, teaching precepts which by nature are commandments of mankind. And having called the crowd to himself, he said to them, Be hearing and be understanding. Not that which enters the mouth renders a man ceremonially unclean, but that which proceeds out of the mouth, this defiles the man. Then the disciples, having come, say to him, Do you know that the Pharisees, having heard the aforementioned word, took violent exception to it, finding in it that of which they disapproved and that which hinders them from acknowledging your authority? But answering, he said, Every cultivated plant which my heavenly Father did not plant shall be pulled up by the roots. Let them alone. Blind leaders are they of the blind. And if a blind person is leading a blind person, both shall fall into the ditch. And Peter answering said to him, Explain the illustration to us. And he said, And as for you, are you even yet devoid of understanding? Do you not understand that everything which enters the mouth passes into the intestines and is ejected into that which is provided as a receptacle for it? But the things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and those things defile the man. For out of the heart come pernicious reasonings, murderers, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false testimonies, malicious slanders. These are the things which defile the man. But to eat with hands which have not been washed ceremonially does not defile the man. And having gone out from that place, Jesus withdrew into the country around Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman, a Canaanite from those regions, having come, cried out, saying, Have pity upon me quickly, O sir, son of David. My daughter is badly demonized. But he did not answer her a word. And his disciples, having come, kept on begging him, saying, Send her off, because she's crying out after us. But he answering said, I was not sent off on a mission except to the sheep, the perishing ones that belong to the house of Israel. And having come, she fell upon her knees and touched her forehead to the ground in profound reverence before him, saying, Sir, be helping me. But answering, he said, It is not a fitting thing to take the bread which belongs to the children and throw it to their little pet dogs. But she said, Yes, indeed, sir. For also the little pet dogs are accustomed to eat from the little morsels which fall from the table of their masters. Then answering, Jesus said to her, O woman, great is your faith. Let it become to you as you desire. And her daughter was healed from that hour. And having passed over from that place, Jesus went to the shore of the Sea of Galilee. And having gone up into the mountain, he was sitting there. And there came to him large crowds, having with them those who were lame, maimed, blind, dumb, and many others, having illnesses of a different nature. And they flung them to the ground at his feet. And he healed them, so that the crowd marveled, seeing those who had been dumb speaking, and those who had been maimed whole, and those who had been lame walking about, and those who had been blind seeing, and they glorified the God of Israel. And Jesus, having called his disciples to himself, said, I am moved with compassion for the crowd, because already they are remaining with me 3 days, and they do not have anything to eat. And to dismiss them, not having eaten, I do not desire to do that, lest at any time they faint along the road. And the disciples say to him, From what place in this uninhabited region should we have so many loaves of bread so as to satisfy such a crowd? And Jesus says to them, How many loaves do you have? And they said, 7, and a few little fish. And having commanded the crowd to recline upon the ground, he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and having offered the blessing, he broke them and kept on giving them to the disciples, and the disciples to the crowds. And they ate, all of them, and were completely satisfied. And the surplus of the broken pieces of food they took away, 7 full reed baskets. And those eating were 4,000 men, apart from women and children. And having sent off the crowds, he went on board the boat and came to the regions of Magadan.